Hey, Kingdom Workers. Welcome to Christ at Work, a podcast inspiring Christ followers to live out the kingdom's purposes in their workplaces. I'm your host, Matt Templeton. On today's episode, I interview Paige Robinson, a dynamic CEO and founder who's blending her Christian faith with her leadership in the competitive world of executive search and recruiting. As someone who navigates the challenges of being a working mom and a business leader, Paige brings several fresh perspectives on living out her faith, especially in high-stakes environments. Join us as Paige shares how her faith informs her approach to leadership, the importance of viewing work as a calling, and how she integrates kingdom values in her interactions with her clients and her team. Here's Paige Robinson. So what I would love for you to do first is just tell us what your work is, what your business is, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and we'll get into like how your thinking is formed around this.
Yeah. So I'm the CEO and founder of Will Reed. We're a go-to-market executive search firm. So you can sort of think about us as kind of your first stop as a venture-backed business as you begin to scale your leadership team. So typically we enter the picture when a founder has raised an institutional round and you can think of this founder, they've been doing everything. So they've been in sales, marketing, CS, and we basically come in and we help them hire their very first leader to take over one of those key functions on the go-to-market side. And then we also come back into the picture, typically helping them hire the next leader when they're preparing to raise a Series C. So that's when you're beginning to have like product market fit and you're beginning to scale. So the way I kind of put it is we're working with basically like business Olympic athletes. Almost all of them are immigrants. They all came, truly, almost every single one of our clients is an immigrant. They risked everything. They came to the United States to build something and left families, left, homes, left security, and have kind of put all their chips on black to say, I'm going to build something truly innovative, and have signed up to really, kind of have a decade-long commitment, typically, to build something that is going to require almost everything of them. And so we're the partner that comes in to help them hire those key strategic leaders to ensure they're successful. So it's a very rewarding and challenging profession, but it's also really just exciting too, because you get to see like the cutting edge of a lot of these ideas and businesses that people are trying to make come to life, that are going to reshape our society and culture for better and sometimes for worse. So anyway, that's what we do.
That's awesome. So in what ways have you brought the kingdom or brought the Lord into your work, whether with your employees or partners or clients? How does that all look in your
Yeah.
business?
So this is a topic I'm really passionate about. So my thinking really changed on this. I would say the beginnings of it changed really in 2015. I went through, for people that are really passionate about this topic, there's a group called Praxis that does a great job of kind of helping put words and language. They did a lot with, a lot of Tim Keller's original work in the books that he did. So I had the privilege of going through that program in 2015. And it was the very first time that someone had really told me as a founder in ways that I could understand that I was not my work, that I was working on something, but I was not my work. And I think I almost had to go through that journey first before I could begin to think about how the kingdom entered my work that I was working on, because it had become so entwined into my identity. And I would say there's probably been, over the course of doing this, there's probably been 2 or 3 times where that has like reared its ugly head again, where I have conflated my identity with my work in ways that were unhealthy. But when that is in a healthy place, then you begin to say, I'm like, wow, this is like a very cool assignment that God has given me. And it's a privilege to do it. And it's messy, honestly. It's messy because you still have to run a business. So, over the course of those years, I've hired fantastic people that have worked out. I've hired some people that weren't a fit and had to let them go. The business has thrived and we've scaled, and it's not thrived in sections, so we had to scale down, and all of that is super messy. But the things that when I've been at my best and the healthiest, and when I've really felt the Lord with me, both in good times and bad, I think the things that have been true is, one, I think I've had an orientation of really seeing my employees as people, not what they could do for me. And that's looked like, honestly, letting people go, in the sense of like not taking it personally when they'd had a really good run at Will Reed. I used to take that so personally if they were to leave the business. And I think now, like, really seeing, like, their value is more than what they can give to me or to my business. And so being excited for people when they leave, when they go on to do something else, and we've got just a really cool alumni base. Like, I'm walking through that right now with, like, a really long-term employee, and I marvel, like, wow, the Lord has brought me so far in that. I'm just like, I'm genuinely excited for her, and not just seeing her through the lens of what it does for me. So that's been a marker of health. I think another one is very, very few of my clients are people of faith. Very, very few. In fact, maybe one or two. And so I've had the opportunity to share my faith with my clients, and share, particularly in this, like, tech has gone through a really hard downturn the last 2 years, where this experience I've had several times of, like, having my identity had to be pulled from work. I just told you who my founders are. They're Olympic athletes that are working 80 hours a week. Harvard, MIT, immigrant, like, work is everything to them, and their babies got dashed in the last 2 years, and it's created this incredible, beautiful opening to have just very real, raw, meaningful conversations about identity and where our hope is found. And so I've been really grateful for a handful of really cool, cool conversations with people over the last 2 years. So anyway, I'll pause there. I think those are the two biggest things, is just my view towards employees, I think, has really changed, and God has really used, like, I didn't start out doing this, but I think God has really transformed my heart to view them as people. And again, that doesn't mean it's not messy. Right now I've got good wins and I've got messy things, but I think my heart is in the right place most of the time now because of that, and then also towards my clients.
Yeah, that's really great. I always tell people, the kingdom is a set of, it's like values that the king has given us, right? And ethics and the way that we treat people. And I think oftentimes we want to be Christians, but we don't actually want to humble ourselves and start acting the way that the kingdom citizens would act. And one of those things is to not find our identity in our work, but everyone does. Like it's like a way, I say it's the way of the empire. Like the opposite of the kingdom is like, make sure your work is like the best identity and that you're completely grounded in that. But how did you go through that process? What were there some breaking points? Was there some suffering? Like what caused you to realize this is not working?
Painfully ripped my tentacles, little claws off of it. No, I've had two primary experiences. Well, really three. I guess there's been 3 seasons where that had to be rewrited for me. The first one was the first business I started failed, and I actually, like, realized that as I was going through this, like, Praxis program. And so halfway through the program, I'd been picked for one business, and halfway through, I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, this isn't gonna work. Like, the economics are not gonna work. What do I do?" And so I had to go through the experience of, like, telling my investors, and, I'd raised money for this, and, firing my co-founder because we couldn't this wasn't gonna work. So, like, how do I graciously do that? How do we part ways over something that's not a viable business? And it just undid me at the time. Like, I just felt undone. I felt like such a failure. And I was really fortunate because I think, in the Lord's kindness, He knew I was going to go through this. And so I was going through that program. So I just got so much good counsel and encouragement. And then also this still, like, humbles me so much. But my I remember, like, calling all these investors being like, "Hey, this isn't gonna work. Like, this isn't gonna work. We tried, I have, X amount of cash left on the balance sheet. I'm happy to return capital. Thank you for betting on me." And all of them were like, "Well, what are you gonna do next?" I was like, "What?" And they're like, "You still have, 6 months of runway. What are you gonna do? Build something else." And I was like, "What? Like, you're gonna rebet on me?" Like, "Yeah, pick yourself up, dust yourself off. Like, I'm gonna rebet on you." And it just was the most humbling experience. And then, parting with my, like, co-founder who is, twice my age, who's really, it was just, that conversation was so redemptive. We still are on good terms. There was a series of just things where it just was like so much prayer and thought went into it. And I saw the Lord just be really kind to me. And so that was one of them. I think that was kind of this first experience of, like, you know, you're not prevented from pain, you're not prevented from hard things, but when you are walking with the Lord through things, like, there are redemptive there are redemptive parts of this that, you were meant to go through, that you were meant to experience. And so, anyway, I'll pause there, but that was, like, one of the 3. I can briefly say the second one was we lost a major client overnight that was like 75% of our business. Don't do that, people. I don't do that anymore. It was like 75% of our business, and I had never had anyone voluntarily leave my company. Never. I'd always like I had let people go, but I never had anyone choose to leave. And I had like a handful of people choose to leave. And it undid me. I didn't handle it well. I took it so personally. I just I took it so personally. And it just took like 6 months really to like walk through that and like rip back the layers and be like, "Wow, you are holding on to this so tightly. This is an assignment that God has given you for however much time he's going to give it to you, and your job is to steward people for as long as they're with you, and you're not their God. You're not in control. The Lord's going to take care of you and the Lord's going to take care of them, and your job is to show up for them and to pray for them and to be for them. And if they want to go do something else, they can." And honestly, I needed them to. Like we didn't have enough work. Like my husband and I was like, "This is a gift." I'm like, "I don't know. Is it a gift?" But it was. And they like all those people have gone on and they're great. They're happy. They and their time at Will Reed was hopefully valuable to them. So anyway, I'll pause there. I know I'm kind of rattling off these stories, but point being is like it's been a lot like it's pain. Pain has been the main driver.
Well, I think we're formed in suffering, so maybe pain is a good thing. But also, this, by the way, the stories are great. That's what people love to hear is the stories. They love to hear the details of what happened because then they can see themselves in those stories. And I think as a maybe this is as a woman founder, I just love that you have recognized that your work is project based because I think a lot of times women struggle with that identity of which project is most important and which thing is the thing that I'm supposed to spend my time on. And just to recognize that we are, and I think the men do it poorly as well, but I think women especially struggle because they often feel pulls in so many different areas of life. And so to recognize that our work is project based, then all of a sudden, if I'm working on this thing that is for a nonprofit, or I'm working on this thing that's for my family, I'm working on this thing that's for my household, like every
Yeah.
piece of work that I have is project based. And it just so happens that this thing generates revenue and this thing might just generate goodness in society or goodness for my family, right? And I think we all can approach that, but I think that's where a lot of women struggle is the project I'm working on worthwhile or valuable, or is that, and that's really actually saying like, is my identity found in this specific thing? So I think that's really helpful. Any other thoughts you have around work as identity, or separating those things?
No, I think those are two goodies. There's plenty more.
You also brought up a thing that I had to like, I think it took me 10 years to, and even now I still feel a little bit of pain of when employees leave me, are, letting them, blessing them and saying like, I'm excited for you to move on, but also just recognizing that sometimes it's better for people, like they've grown with us and now they're moving on to their next exciting thing. But I think that comes from a heart, which you mentioned, which is to see that they're not just working for me. It's what's best for them. They're humans. So talk a little bit more about that, or maybe some of the pain, suffering slash stories that you encountered in seeing your employees as humans.
I just think it's really easy, particularly from Christian. Like I feel like there's just like such a narrative that like everything should be tied up with a bow. And the reality of it is like we're eternal beings, we're dealing with eternal beings, and we're not going to always have the satisfaction of things on this side of heaven being tied up with a bow. And like your employees are a work in progress, you're a work in progress. I have many, 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 most of the stories, God has been gracious enough to give me a bow that ties off, where it's like employees come back that we parted ways and we're friends. And I mean, that is the majority story for anyone that's worked with me, where God has just been so gracious. They're still in my life. I get to be a part of and excited for them in their next thing. But there are a handful that are messy still and they hurt. And all you can do is hope that, at some point there's going to be a redemptive arc to it. And I think like I just want to say that because that has been one of the like I think I don't know if this is a male or female thing, but I think particularly maybe it's just a Paige thing. Harmony is a big relational harmony is a big part of how I experience contentment and happiness and fulfillment. And if you essentially if you're a business owner, I mean, truly if you're just doing anything hard, you're putting yourself in a position where you're vulnerable. Like you're putting yourself out there and you're exposing yourself to heartache, and heartache will come. Like you're not going to always get a perfect tied off bow. And so I think that's honestly where like a lot of times faith does come in. And I have really tried to lean into just consistently praying for for people that have worked with me. And I don't always do it faithfully, but like when I find myself feeling anxious about, "Ugh, I wish that was resolved." Again, by God's grace, there's very few of those, but there's a couple of them and they hurt me. They make me sad when I think about them. Prayer is the answer. It's just a resubmitting of that because, you know, bitterness is not an answer. And honestly, like a conversation may not be the answer. We don't always get through action or conversation that resolution that you want. Sometimes it really is just to go and take it back to the feet of Jesus and say, I trust you. Like, I trust you. I tried to do the right thing. I don't know if I did it perfectly. I tried to do the right thing. It didn't feel like it worked out the way I wanted. And it feels messy, Lord. Will you take it from me? Will you heal this in your own time? And will you be for them? Will you show up for them? And so, anyway, yeah, those couple situations I just pray for often. I pray for them. I pray for their good. And I see the Lord heal my heart in ways that maybe even a conversation with them couldn't do. And I just think that's just part of being on this side of heaven. And if you do hard things, this will happen. This will happen. It's guaranteed. Just because you're dealing with other messy humans and you're a messy human. So anyway, I think another thing too, it's good to like divide, that this has been really helpful for me, is there are two kinds of failure. And I think it's important to name them. There is business failure, which is like, oh, I should have known that wouldn't work. Or like, now I know, 75% of my business shouldn't have been with one client. I was an idiot. I wish I hadn't done that. Well, that was a business failure. Now I know, like there's grace for that. Like in the same way that you think about a child growing up and, experience, you have to experience things. You have to learn. Lots of business failure where it was like, looking back on it, I won't make that again, or I won't make it the same way. It's just part of it. And again, it's, if you can kind of view it as like part of the journey and honestly part of the fun, getting better at stuff. And like, you have to oftentimes learn through mistakes. That's different than moral failure. Moral failure is like, I did wrong by this person. I took something from this person. I lied to, I fudged the truth here. And candidly, because we're sinners, there, these things happen over the course of our lives. I think the way we respond, like a lot of times they get conflated and they actually require a very different response from us. And so I think it's just really important for Christian founders to like separate those two things, or just people, work in general. It's like, okay, that was a business failure. There's grace for that. Write it down, learn from it. How can I prevent it in the future? Do I need wiser people around me that can help advise me? And then moral failure is like, I need to repent of this. Like, I need to, like, that was wrong. We don't do that. We don't fudge the truth when we're a Christian. We don't exaggerate a client account if it's not the case, or we don't view our employees as a means to an end. And all that stuff is there and it's going to happen. And it just, I think asking God to give you a very soft heart for moral failure so that you can continue to kind of have this experience of repenting and being made new. But those deserve different responses and not to be conflated.
That's great. Do you teach this to your employees? Like, would your employees be able to enumerate some of these things?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think so. I don't know that I teach it. I think I live it, but I don't think I teach it well necessarily.
Well, and I guess that leads me to the question, like, do you think that your employees would be able to say, like, I'm certain they know you're a Christian. Would they think that your business is living according to kingdom values? Would they see that and say, like, wow, this is a really different kind of business, whether they're a believer or not? Would they look at your business and see that?
I think there have been a lot of seasons where that's the case. I think in markets that like candidly, like we're coming off of a 2-year market where tech crashed. I mean, we saw there's like a 50% washout of like tech companies. We hire for tech. We're downstream from that. I mean, we're coming out of it. Luckily, like we're almost on the other side, but it's been a hard 2 years. I think you do the best you can to do that well, but it's still just really hard, right? Like you're still like trudging through what feels like day after day of business failure because the market is constricting. And so I think I honestly, it's still pretty fresh for me to like go back and digest. It's like, what could I have done better? How could I have handled that better? What I can tell you is I had this, like, I honestly asked the Lord about this, like in the last 2 weeks of just being like, hey, do I need to repent of anything? Do I need to stand before you and repent of anything over the last 2 years? And like, there's definitely been moments of conviction, but I think holistically, like, I do think my heart posture was for my employees. And that came up in a series of ways they may not ever know. They may never know things behind the scenes. where I was like really for them. So yes, I think a lot of seasons that would be more clear. I think the last 2 years when you're in a market that's kind of in a free fall, I think I'm still digesting. I'm like, I hope that's the case. I hope that's the case. But it feels fresh.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think too, when you're feeling pressure, our ugliest side comes out during the pressure, right? So it's even if you're attempting to like live well every day, there are definitely going to be those moments where you're like, I feel the pressure and I don't want to, maybe I'm not turning to the Lord, or maybe I'm not demonstrating to my employees these things. And I don't think that's necessarily a condemnation as much as just an awareness of, oh, this is where I can like adjust. Cause when it's easy, it might be fun to talk about how good the Lord is and how he's providing. And then when it feels like things are not going well, it's like, is he still providing? Yes, of course he's still providing, but it doesn't always feel like maybe I'm not grateful. Maybe actually the pressure has caused me to feel bitter or to feel resentful or to be mad or to like, why isn't it easier? Why isn't it the way I want it to be?
I think it's worth mentioning going back to those two types of failure, business failure versus moral failure. Business failure still causes pain for others, right? Like if
That's good.
the bit, and again, you can't control all business failure. Like there are market factors. I don't think Will Reed was experienced anything different than any other executive search firm on the market in the last 2 years in our space, but it's still, it was tough. And I think there's still a little bit of like from a leader perspective is like you can't become numb to how things affect other people. Like, by us having less work to work on, that affects people's paychecks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't become numb to that. You can't turn off your feelings and your heart to experience. Like, that means something for that family. Like, they have less income to provide for their family. That affects them and that hurts. And so it's an interesting thing. But I also think one of the biggest things too is it's hard to find the balance of is just that you're not God. You're not responsible. And God oftentimes does work most through suffering. And you don't know how hard things that are happening in your business or what's going on right now is like actually the very intended situation to create what the Lord needs to create change to someone else. Like you just don't know. And so I think it's just like constantly resubmitting to the fact that it's like, you are not God. You're not God. Your job is to show up and be faithful. And I think that was the refrain of one of my board members for years. Like that's always I would say, like, hey, your job is to show up and be faithful. That's all you can do. Show up and be faithful. Treat people fairly, treat people right as best you know how, show up and be faithful. And I think that's like actually really freeing because you're not God. You don't know what he's doing across all these situations.
That's great. Do you have any stories where you've faced opposition for being a Christ follower? You've had to like either turn down a client or you've been in a situation where like there's been pressure to like, I have to choose this over choosing what the world might say is best.
Yes. We hired a gay employee and she's lovely. She worked with us about a year and a half. We're still friends. I think really highly of her. And this was like in the thick of 2020, 2021, where every company was expected to weigh in on everything. And, in her interview process, I just felt like I really wanted to hire her. I really wanted her to come work with me. And again, I think I just really enjoy her and learned a lot from her. But we had to kind of have this conversation. Like I felt really scary and very vulnerable. But I had this conversation with her in her final interview. I was like, "Hey, I really want you to work here. I really want you to feel safe here. If you need from the company that you're working for that they're going to have to weigh in on these different social issues, I don't think we're going to be the right place because I'm not going to do that. We're not going to jump in on every one of these things. And, some of those things, I just can't do. But if you can feel supported and cared for outside of that, like if I can, if we can show up and have a great relationship and, treat you fairly and you like that makes you feel seen and known, then I would love for you to work with me." And it was just, I think like the honesty in that conversation felt really vulnerable and scary. And she was so gracious about it. And she came and worked for us. And, again, I think it was like an overall really great experience for her and for me. And I learned a lot. And I feel like we both were able to like kind of work through that and like kind of come to like a really beautiful kind of working relationship. But yeah, that felt I don't know, that felt like you can't do that today. Can you do that? I don't know if you can do that. Can we have that conversation? And I think companies now are having more of that. Like, I think like that felt really, really scary at the time. I think a lot of companies are having that conversation now. I'm like, kind of saying like, hey, we're not going to weigh in on all this stuff. If you need that, we may not be the right fit. If that's like part of how you feel safe. And, I think I mean, you're even seeing large multinational companies doing that. But like at the time, it felt so bold and foreign.
Yeah, I have my own stories of both moral and business failure in that genre. And what I've sort of learned from that is like you do have to, and you just modeled it for us, have a gracious conversation. Like one, like not communicating or not having the conversation doesn't build a strong relationship. Just like in any sort of conflict or any sort of like we don't see eye to eye, conversation heals things. But also there's something about like a what is it, a soft word or a gentle word turns away wrath. Like you bring the gracious conversation versus the hard like I need to make sure we bring the line and the difference between these things and like of course that never wins friends and influences people, but I think oftentimes like we can be as Christians clever and winsome and gracious in our speech, and then there's beautiful ways to work with people that see differently than us but also not have to compromise on what we believe. And certainly that may still turn people away even with a gentle or gracious conversation, but I think you modeled for that. Like that's the one of the ways that you work through that. But not having the conversation usually doesn't lead to more gracious and gentleness. It just leads to more angst or frustration or disagreement that could bubble up into something more
Yeah.
harsh. Yeah, that's great. Thanks
I
for
think
sharing
I
that.
think another example, like, and I think this is you have to kind of figure out like where is this in each of your like industries, but like another example for us is like in search, you're basically like trying to place someone in an impossible number of variables you can't control. So you're taking one human and you're placing them into a highly volatile early stage startup situation where there's like a whole bunch of other humans and a bunch of whole other market factors like the market, VCs, like you're betting against other Olympic athletes that are also raising tons of money that are competing with you head to head, right? So many variables across the board. And we're trying to like place people and have them find a lasting home. And, most of the time that works. But there are a handful of situations where we are under this guarantee or we give our clients a guarantee of like, hey, if this person doesn't work out within 6 months, we'll come back. And I think that there's a real temptation because you don't get paid more money from that to kind of like slough off the redo if you have to do one of those. And I think like that's an area where it's like, I think that we really do try to like take those really seriously if in a rare situation where we have to do it. That feels like another kind of like redemptive example. And again, a lot of times it's like technically, I think you laid off this whole team. I don't think it was necessarily our candidate. I think your sales motion, you went from being like a sales assist motion to being a PLG. Like you laid off everyone. So was my candidate a failure? Probably not, but there's still this option. And I've seen like a couple of examples of that where you build a client for life. Like you build like the relationship candidly could have fractured because your original placement didn't work out for various reasons. Who kn like, a million factors of, like, who did what or what what happened, but, like, the way you show up to, like, make it right can really be a huge difference maker in the relationship, and I think anyway, I think every industry has this sort of thing where it's easy to slough it off. It's easy to not give your best. It's easy to, like, prioritize revenue or, like, other things, and
Well, that was what I was thinking when you prioritize revenue and profit, which you have to some degree. But if you prioritize them over humans, then there's this, and so there's this balance between like, okay, I'm willing to almost make a sacrifice because it is a time and somewhat revenue sacrifice to reinvest in this relationship, but the relationship for the long term matters. So I'm willing to, and they're a human, so I want to stay in relationship with that other human. So yeah,
yeah, for
that's a
sure.
great example. So there's a whole spectrum of how businesses have looked at what faithful Christian business or kingdom investment looks like. And so, you find businesses all along the spectrum. Like where, if someone's just getting started or trying to figure out how to do this better, maybe they're an employee or maybe they do own their own business, where would you recommend they start? How could they begin to think like this?
I think one simple way is, I think Tim Keller's book, Every Good Endeavor, is just such a good crash course on this. I would just recommend that book to anyone. I think it's just really freeing. Like I think you go back to it's like, what is the mark? Like forget all this stuff. What is the mark of a Christ follower? It's freedom. God gives freedom. to us. That is the marker of a life that's being lived, and that you're like, the difference between surviving and thriving is freedom. When you're surviving, it's because you feel like weighed down. You feel like you're in bondage to something. And that's not how we were intended to live. And that doesn't mean you're free of hardship. It doesn't mean you're free of trials. It doesn't mean bad things don't happen. But we are meant to thrive in the midst of those things. And so I just think there's so many pitfalls and shackles that can come with work. And so I think making freedom in Christ kind of your aim is I think the right North Star. So that can be everything from like, hey, there's a pitfall of like, financial mismanagement. We're spending too much. I made my lifestyle bigger than my work, and now I'm in shackles to that. Like that's a common pitfall that a lot of us can be susceptible to. Like that's not freedom. There's a whole host of like really great thinkers that have written a lot about that. But work is meant to be an assignment and a joy and hard, because post fall, all that stuff. But you don't need to add I don't think God intended for this added weight for that. I think the same is true for, like, relationships. Prayer is I think is so underestimated, just the way that it can show up even in client meetings and difficult conversations. I've had so many difficult conversations that didn't go the way I thought, like, went so much better than I would have ever thought when I prayed over them, and so many other ones where I'm like, I was so flat-footed. If I had just taken a minute to seek the Lord before that, it may have still been hard, but I would not have been flat-footed. I had one 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, I one of them I prayed over a lot, and it was so much better than I ever would have thought. I had another difficult conversation, kinda was feeling buoyed by this first one and I just waltzed into it and was so incredibly flat-footed, and I don't know that it would have actually gone any different, but I would have been different. So just I think prayer is like a huge one, and then making freedom your North Star,
Those are
and you'll
great.
be amazed. I think you'll be
Yeah,
amazed at what God does.
I think oftentimes when we're worried about a situation or we're like uncertain about something we're walking into and we pray, yeah, it goes amazingly. And then when we walk in pride or like maybe it's a true confidence, but the confidence is like not founded in the Lord. Oftentimes they're not as well. So yeah, I think that's a great example. Like no matter what the situation, like asking the Lord to be with you, and He gives so much grace, especially for the hard times. And when you say freedom, it just like really resonates with me because we changed part of our vision last year in our business to say our main objective is to unlock freedom for others. And so sometimes that means unlocking freedom and creating stability in home ownership, right? And sometimes that means unlocking freedom as we walk people through financial literacy or understanding how to spend their money. And sometimes that means helping someone understand really what spiritual, eternal freedom looks like. And so whatever level of freedom that is, our vision is we're unlocking freedom for others. And so I just, freedom is one of my favorite words. I think that's like actually one of our big opportunities that we're bringing when we're bringing about the kingdom. What we're actually saying is there's a way that the king has, and and following him leads to greater freedom. And so whether that means bringing the ethics of his kingdom into everyday life, or whether that actually means allowing him to completely transform, redeem, and restore what's broken in the world, like that, all of that is bringing more freedom, even as we think that freedom is actually autonomy and self-focus and self-interest and these opposite things that actually don't produce freedom. They produce, deadness. But yeah, I just love that. I think that's a great point.
I think with that, I think one of the temptations, I don't know if you see this, but I definitely have I'm exiting a season of this, but I think, I don't know what the demographics of your listeners are, but I think when you kind of hit your 30s, you're in your job, work is hard, period. Doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to have good days and bad days. It's hard. It's work. It's post fall. That's a guarantee. And then you're like also in this mix of like raising oftentimes you're raising kids at the same time. And it just goes, I think it's really easy. Like I think going from like, I think there's just this trend of acceptance of like, I'm surviving or going to survive these years. And it's just like you're soldiering, right? Like you wake up in the morning, your kids wake you up at, 2 hours earlier than you intended. You missed your quiet time. There's, you're packing school bags and lunches, and then you go to work and you get beat up there, and then you get home and you're back on duty, and you and your spouse like missed each other. And so you're fighting. So that's not really like, it's just like work abounds. And I think it's just like very easy to like kind of accept this like sense of like, we're just surviving these years, or, it's just, we're not thriving, we're surviving. And I think honestly there's almost like an Instagram like commitment to like making that like let's wrap that in humor and meme it and make it funny. And I think that like I don't know 100% like what the answer is for all of that, but I think we should be really cautious about that sentiment taking hold and taking root because I just don't know that that actually is like what the like I don't that doesn't feel marked by the spirit to me. And I think that that just feels like the ditch that's so easy to fall into in this phase of life when you're building careers and building families where everything just kind of can mesh to feel like drudgery, like day you just are living for the weekend kind of thing. And so anyway, I say this in all humility, not as someone that is exempt from it, as someone that is like 100% in it. Like we have 3 kids, pregnant with our 4th. Travis and I both work. We both work a lot. I like I'm in it, but I throw that out there as like a cautionary tale. I don't think that should be a marker of our lives as believers. I think we
Totally.
should war against it.
Our fourth is due in 7 weeks, so I'm right there with you. But I'm curious, like, so how do you balance that? Because you've got clients that are working 80 hours a week, and so sometimes it's this culture of if you're not working the same amount as we are, then are you really a good partner? And so how do you balance? I mean, you're obviously working a lot, but how do you balance that and make those things priority?
You sort of have to figure out like what those non-negotiables are. I'm not the first person to say this. I think this has been said a lot by secular and non-secular, like secular and Christian speakers, but I think it's so true. Like no one is going to set boundaries for you in your professional life. No one.
Yeah,
No
and the
one.
boundaries are gonna, if they do, they're gonna be so far beyond that they'll keep moving beyond. It's just always
No one.
moving. Yeah.
You have to know what your limitations are. So like all of us have different size plates. So I tend to be a very like I like to be busy. I like high capacity. Like I like to have a lot going on. I can overdo it. 100% I've overdone it a number of times, but like, for me, I don't mind a couple days a week where I have to get online after kids are down to respond to a few emails. And my husband's the same way. Like we don't mind that. Like that doesn't feel like that's taking, but like I love having my mornings with my kids. I don't want to do early calls. Sometimes that's hard because I have clients in India and I have to like figure out how to make that work with them. But like, yeah, like that morning time of being with my kids and getting to my quiet time and getting to see them off to school. I don't want to miss dinner. The difference between me being a mom that wraps up at 4:35 versus the mom that wraps up at 5:36, dramatically different. Dramatically different. Like that 30 minutes to an hour, I'm a radically different mom. And I don't mind getting back online later. Like if I need to get back online to wrap up a few things, I don't mind doing that. I can do that. But just realizing that hour for my family dramatically changes the course of the evening and changes the way I love my kids. Like I enjoy them more when I'm not frantic at 6 p.m. trying to like make dinner and everyone's yelling and everyone's hungry and like I'm not enjoying my kids at that point. So I think you have to kind of figure out like what that is for you, but sort of living an inspected like we have to live inspected lives. You have to sort of really look at this stuff critically and like see the way these things affect each other and affect you as a person. So like I also get a lot of joy from hosting and from having people over and we have a lot of friends. We really enjoy being around like I actually for me to show up at work and give my best self, if I go long periods of time without doing that, I'm actually I'm a wraith at work because that stuff actually rebuoys me. It makes me show up better at work. So you just kind of have to, what refills your cup and you have to have that. So anyway, I don't know if that's helpful, but
But definitely helpful. Definitely helpful. What advice would you give to people who want to integrate these things more on a daily basis? You gave a few pieces of advice. Any other advice you'd give specifically on a daily basis, like activities or rhythms, or obviously you gave a few life rhythms there, but anything else you'd give on a daily basis?
I I think you can't skip like there are just some things that are just daily. Like, I think you look at the way so you almost like kind of take it back to, when God took the Israelites out of slavery and he took them to freedom, right? This has been a theme of this conversation. He had to rebuild their understanding of work. Like work had always been this like they've been enslaved. They didn't have a choice. So he took, they're in the desert. He took them out of a hard thing into a different kind of hard thing. But he gave them like a new set of rules, a new set of ways. And like part of it is like he created like habitual like celebrations to remind them of God's faithfulness. And so we are forgetful creatures. We just forget, and we forget every day. Every day. And so I think there's like, and I don't pretend to do this completely faithfully. But I definitely try. The time with the Lord in the morning for me is really, really important. It reorients my day, which is what am I doing? Who am I doing this for? Where is my identity found? And the reality is like, if your identity is like, can be reoriented towards something bigger than yourself, you actually will treat your employees a lot better than like making their opinion of you the highest opinion. Like if you're trying to do this for man, you're not going to actually, you oftentimes will make a bunch of decisions that are actually quite weird because they're based off of fear and other things. So choosing freedom in the morning, that's a big one for me. And then another big one is like during the year, my husband and I have a handful of things that we have found to be really helpful for our marriage to like kind of keep us working together. Cause that's, that if we're not in sync, that's a huge source of, that's you don't have the margin for it. You need to be a team. You need to be working together. So we basically have, I'll share it. We have a date night every Thursday. So we like feel like for us, like the price of having a babysitter, that's worth it to us. We go out every Thursday. My kids know it's date night. They get to watch they get to watch 20 minutes of a show. It's fun for them too. That's a thing. And then we don't talk, we try really hard not to talk logistics on Thursdays. Like that is just reconnection. It's joy together. Friday, we have this thing called family ops. So we say FOPS. It's on my calendar. I have FOPS every Friday. We take my son to school and we go get a coffee, and it's a business meeting. Like calendars out. Like we both work, like calendars out, trips, dates, work dates, nanny logistics, praying for our kids. What's going on? Have you said yes to that? Have I said that? Are you holding that ball or am I holding that ball? It's like all logistics. And separating those two has been like a real gift in our marriage because and I also like, I want to do that in the morning. At night, I'm exhausted. Like, I don't want to, I'm exhausted. So, like, having an hour in the morning to do that. And then on Friday nights is Sabbath in our family. So, we like order pizza, make pizza. We watch a movie together as a family. We've had so much fun. Our kids are watching the original Star Wars. Oh my gosh, it's been a blast. It's been so fun. And that just feels like the whole week is like building towards this crescendo of like, starting on Thursday, it just starts getting fun. Like, it just sort of feels like we're working really hard at the beginning of the week. And then we just have these like built in like rhythms of rest that are really life-giving. And it just, I don't know, I've just found this to be really powerful with like kind of balancing out the work week and like continuing to kind of have this like North Star. So anyway, I think it starts with like, I mean, this is kind of the Tim Keller philosophy too, is like to integrate these things into work, you have to be healthy yourself. Like I can give you a bunch of how, like there are people that are way better at doing this. They like teach their employees. Like I mean, I can give you like 10 people that should be on this podcast before me. That said, what I do know is that like if you are trying to do all these things in your work and you're not doing this stuff, it's inauthentic and it honestly is like manufactured. Like, I'm sure I could do more stuff programmed, but like I just know that if I'm not abiding in the Lord, I'm not having a healthy marriage with my husband, and I'm not like having moments of like rest with my kids, I am not fit. I can't do anything else we're talking about. Those things have to be true. Otherwise it's fake. I'm a fake showing up at work. So anyway, I don't know. I'm sure
I
other
think,
people have better ideas, but
I think you've given us some great thoughts, and also I think you've given us a lot of great thoughts from a wife and mom and perspective. Is there anything else you'd share with women in the workplace, whether it's from the wife or mom perspective, or just from being female in a work environment, that you'd say this is the way to live the way of the kingdom?
yes, I care a lot about this. I think a couple things. I think one thing that's been really interesting, to sort of, I don't even know if I totally had this is like a little bit half baked, but I had this realization the other day that my friends that have known me for like a really long time, I'm just Paige. I'm not working mom Paige. I'm not CEO Paige. I'm just Paige. And I have all these other like things about me. But I think as I've like kind of, as our kids are getting to grade school and our kids go to a wonderful school, most of the moms don't work there. They're lovely. I didn't realize like how tempting or easy it is for like there to be like, oh, you're a working mom or you're a stay-at-home mom. Like just a natural, like very, like it's not even intended to be a division. a lot of times it's just intended to be a conversation starter, but it can end up being a division if you're not careful of like the working moms, stay-at-home moms. And I'm really trying to combat that because it's all like work and it's all assignments. And the big thing is like, are we abiding? Like, are you where God has you right now? Like, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Like, that could be being a fantastic stay-at-home mom and being room mom. Bless all those room moms. I'm not one. Bless them. Like, so glad they're doing it. I don't have capacity to be a room mom. I show up. I go to the Valentine's party. I may have not brought anything. I'm here. I'm there. Like, bless all those moms that did that. So just like, I think just being really careful that like we're not feeding into those like divisions in any way. And I think the other one is I think it's really tempting as a working mom to like keep score with your husband and also just like give into complaining because like your mind does want to explode a lot. Like, okay, I have 3 doctor's appointments, we have a Valentine's party, like all the kids are supposed to go to the park, we need new swimsuits. And oh, by the way, I've got this like board meeting on Thursday and doing this podcast on Friday. I have 2 sales meetings, this clients unhappy. Like your mind just can explode like sometimes. And so I think being mindful that like if you're on that edge or you just feel like I'm complaining all the time, like this is the way I'm connecting with people. And I've so been there. I've so been that person. And can still like come like I'm humbly submitting this. I'm still tempted to be that person sometimes. I just think like it's a signal like, hey, we're surviving, we're not thriving. Why are we surviving and not thriving? This is freedom. Like, am I still abiding? Am I still where God has me? Does something have to come out of my garden? Do I need to take a different position at work? Do I need to get more help? Pay for the extra nanny? Do what you need to do? Like, that's just not where we're supposed to hang out. So just be, I think, mindful of signals of division, complaining, keeping score. Those are all signals of surviving, not thriving. I think are really, 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 really easy. Easy to happen.
You've mentioned a few different resources, Every Good Endeavor by Tim Keller, Praxis. Any other resources you'd recommend to our listeners? Whether books or podcasts or pamphlets or websites, any of
Let
the...
me think for a second. I know I've read other stuff. I know it sounds weird. This is not actually. I think it's really good to read fiction. I think it's really good to read fiction. I think it's a good fiction. I think it's a great way to like cure soldiering. Like you
Hmm.
don't need more book assignments. You don't need more podcast. Like it's really like we're meant to be creative beings. And I think like one of the gifts that God gives us is like find the thing that like makes you creative.
Hmm.
Again, in nature, do you need to hike? Do you need to paint? Do you need to read fiction? Like I I remember I don't know if you know who Evan Loomis is. He founded a bit like so he's who got me into Praxis. Anyway, he started a business like early on and I think it was successful, but his like big thing is he's known for is he's one of the founder of Icon, like the 3D printable homes, and he's had this massive run with it. But anyway, I remember telling him I was like, I'm exhausted. Like I just feel like my creativity is zapped. He was like, read fiction. I was like waiting for him to give me like a bunch of business books. I was like, what? Like, what business book should I be reading? And he was like, forget business books. Go read Lord of the Rings. And I was like, what? He was like so right. Like that's actually what my soul needed is I didn't need another business book. I didn't need another how-to. I needed just to read fiction. So I will pass on that nugget. You might
I
just
love
need to
it.
read fiction or watch a good movie or paint or do something. Like that may actually be what your soul needs.
Yeah, I do think we got to re-energize our creativity.
For women, get fantastic childcare. Get fantastic childcare. Like you have to have that. Don't cut corners there. You will probably earn enough money, like don't go into debt over it, but I'm a big believer. I will give Sheryl Sandberg her due. I do think this is right. If you feel like the Lord is like leading you to be in the workplace for a while and like a career is like part of like your way of abiding, like if that is how God has wired you. Getting great childcare early on can just feel like every dollar I make is going to great childcare. It will get better over time. You will get more autonomy at work. Like this is her whole thing. Lean in and then it'll get better. It does. It really does. Like there's a lot of women I like, one of the women I like love I met at my kid's school. Like she's a big time like law partner. And I think it's really easy to judge her. Like first of all, you have 2 nannies, you have enough like, no, don't judge her. Like, don't judge her. Stop that. Stop that. That enables her to like not do laundry on the weekend and be with her kids. And she's showing up. She's shows up to everything. She's with her people. And guess what? I'm that person now. Like we have an au pair and a nanny. And guess what? Like I love my kids. I freaking love my kids. I'm with them all the time. I'm so with them. Like, don't let anyone shame you for that. Stop that. So
That's awesome.
you get childcare that
That's
like,
perfect.
yeah, pay for it. It's worth it.
Any final thoughts you have that you want to share? Any closing remarks or anything that you just want to make sure? You've given so many great nuggets. I've written a bunch
No,
down, so don't worry.
I don't know if I have done that at all. Honestly, just we need Christians in the arena. We need Christians doing hard things. We need Christians in secular environments. And it's going to be messy. Like it doesn't wrap up with a bow. Like, and there's grace for that. And the Lord is with you. And I just want to give people the freedom to fail and the freedom to do hard things. And like, it will be hard. And you know what? God, that may be God's grace. Like, I truly believe the biggest gift God has given my character is building this business. Like, I feel like he has been so far, not guaranteed he will, likely hard things are to come, but I feel like he's treated me with kid gloves so many other areas of my life, like good marriage, healthy kids. But I'm so grateful for how challenging Will Reed has been. I would be a monster without it, I'm sure. And it's just broken me down, beat me up, and melted all these hard places in my heart that could have quickly easily been given to pride and other things. And like that happens when you're abiding and when you do hard things. Like the Lord is with you and he's going to use it. And I just want Christians to like enter the arena, get in, don't sit on the sidelines, do stuff. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Let's do this.
Be encouraged because Christ is at work in you, through you, and with you too. Hey, Kingdom Workers, don't forget to subscribe to our show on your podcast player. And like every other podcast, we would love a review on Apple Podcasts. But most importantly, will you share this episode with several friends who need to hear it? I've found the most powerful and interesting podcasts are recommendations from friends. So please share the link to this episode with 2 or 3 of them now. We appreciate you so much.